welcome to Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, effervescent Evan Ginsberg, and Dr. Mike Leno. So, would you like to introduce our guest for tonight?
I sure would. I'm going to be using the term brilliant, genius, humanitarian, the embodiment of the film Razor's Edge in David Sahadi, who is the son of a total god legend in terms of sports and entertainment. My editor, as well as Alan Boltes for Wrestling World magazine, but he transcended like his son David would. I mean, all aspects of sport and entertainment. His dad was just the greatest guy, Lou Sahadi. Let's show a photo. I've got Russ three photos. There is David with
Oh,
his dad, who everybody in the wrestling business and sports world and entertainment globally loved. And then this is his magazine. Alan Bolte, who's a ring announcer for Roy Shire and his program maker. Let's bring that. There's one of your dad's classic Wrestling World magazines, which
hmm
had the most innovative, eye-catching, usually just a single wrestler on the cover in its class day. And I don't know if you've gone through all of those magazines, David, but here's an article that your dad wrote on the guy I was the last speaker for at his funeral in San Jose, and a pallbearer, Pampero Firpo, who went from main eventing against Bruno, San Martino, Pedro Morales, the Sheik, all over the world, to then feeling very depressed that no one recognized him anymore, as he was a mail carrier and a FedEx driver towards the end of his life. He was, oh, geez, main event at Boston Garden, Madison Square Garden, and now nobody knows who I am. But uh, we're talking about David's. Last time we interviewed him, he had a fantastic book, basically on his father, that had everything and anything you could want in it. My Dad, My Dying Son: A True Story of Love and Legends. He has produced a number of books, not just wrestling, but introspective. Search, all of us as human beings hopefully try to search for the meaning of life. And he took a break from wrestling and overall global entertainment to try to find that. And I'm going to ask him if that's what he's doing, or what he did and maybe continues doing, is sort of interpretive for each human being, or do we all come at that same conclusion? But the latest book it's coming out in March, and he'll address that. Well, I got to go. Backstage Pass, Tales from Beyond the Squared Circle. Some of the other books, Last Call of the Gods, that you're going to want to read, The Nocturnal Me, Jesus Orbits the Moon, many others. But the one and only David Sahadi, king of wrestling brilliance. So, David, I don't know how you do all of these things. You're juggling, you have your own brand, your entertainment company, you've had pilots and shows put out there, and then all the things you do in wrestling for all the top companies globally. But then how do you find the time to properly do these books that everybody just goes for and marks out for when they come out?
Simple. It's a passion. It's a joy. It's not a job. But I want to go back and unpack a few things you said. When you're making descriptions of me, the one that stood out was humanitarian, because that's who I am right now at this point in my life. I like to help others. I like to uplift, heal, and inspire other people as well, which is what's so great about this new job, REF, because I'm doing my life's purpose in the form of a job, helping company that came into creation. Uh, Brought it to life, and so many wrestlers are now have a place to go. So many wrestling fans have a place to watch your product. The Olympic style wrestling fan. So let me just unpack a few more things. Thank you for all the great things about my dad. If you're trying to get me to cry, I'm this close, Mike, about crying, because whenever you mention my dad, that's my heartstrings. He was my light, my son, SUN. That was a play on words there. My mentor, and his passing was 100 times worse than I thought it would be when it happened. And it's funny because my dad's not a writer, he's an author. Don't call him a writer. He always would say, I'm an author. I authored 31 books. I didn't write 31 books. I did all those magazines as well too, but the other books that you mentioned that I published, I did those mostly for my friends because they were self-published. They were Amazon KDP, and
Mhm.
it's hard to sell books. So I basically did those so I can give them out to my friends. They're very inspirational about helping life. Some of them have an outrageous title like Jesus Orbits the Moon to get somebody's attention, but it's about 33 real life stories of me helping people in life. And I put Jesus in there as, instead of like going to my higher source above me or my higher self within me to give the advice I gave them, I use Jesus as the medium for me giving them the advice. And he's not really what we're doing when you find out at the end, but it's just like, man, you talk with my father and humanitarian stuff, and he was such, I'm gonna say it's, I know it's jaded, but he was the greatest father one could ever have, and in my biased opinion, the greatest man that ever lived. So now I'm ready to answer your questions since I got all that out of the way because you had a lot to unpack in the beginning and you touched me emotionally. Thank you.
Well, he was just so beloved. One of the photos I sent you, and I hope you got him out of the three because it took a while. I'll resend him when we reconnect. Is him with Bill Apter and Stanley Weston, who was my other boss. Stanley Weston created Wrestling Review and Wrestler Inside Wrestling in that tabloidy style. But your dad's magazines felt more like picking up a football or Major League Baseball magazine. They were as close to shoot as you were going to get in the 60s or 70s, which wasn't, it was more like Gong magazine in Japan than it was Pro Wrestling Illustrated or its predecessors, Wrestler Inside Wrestling. And your dad was a bon vivant type of gregarious guy who everybody loved being around. I know he rubbed shoulders with kings and queens. It's like a Dusty Rhodes promo, but he was so beloved and brought a human element to wrestling because a lot of people just in wrestling that seems, and Evan and Russell talk about that, they seem to obsess over it, but
Yeah.
there's way more to life. Sure, it's fantastic and it's fighting opera and blah blah blah, all this creative stuff that goes into it from geniuses such as yourself, but there's a great big world out there in the universe, and you had the balls to chuck it and go and do those things. And I don't know.
Mike,
Well,
can I
did you
stop
talk
you
to your
right
dad
there?
about that? What did your dad think about that
Can I stop
stuff?
you right there before I get to that question? You mentioned that my dad made the wrestlers feel human and that kind of stuff. And I didn't know that until today when you said that, but that's what I did when I went to WWF at the time. I tried to humanize these athletes and get them, show the real person behind the costume, behind the veneer, and make them present like real athletes. So that came from my father, and I didn't realize that until today that you said my dad did that. But what would my dad think about this book? I think he'd be happy about that I wrote this book, because the other books I wrote were self-published, so they don't count. The other books that I wrote, this book I authored, and it's being published by ECW and distributed by Simon& Schuster. So on the scoreboard right now, it's Papalu 31, his son 1. The other 5 books don't count. So this is published, and I want to keep it at that score, Mike. I'm going to write other books, but having one, no, actually, I want to make it 2 published. I want my dad and my dying son eventually published because that's a combination book. And that book I really love because I learned a lot about my father during writing that book. And I won't go into detail here because I didn't know in the last interview that we had a couple of years ago, but it's like they're alternating chapters. Mine are the odd chapters. They started to pick them up from the hospital in 2020 of October when he had a horrific brain fall, and his are flashbacks of different books that he wrote condensed down to 8 to 10 pages. And he said he was a rock star and beloved by so many, and he was. And I didn't realize that until I was writing that book. I mean, I knew that he was beloved, but I didn't realize that he was really rubbing shoulders with the kings and the emperors and the queens and everything in the sports entertainment world. To me, it was just normal life whenever he would take me on the road to Super Bowl, and like everybody would be seeing him saying, "Hey, Luke, come over here. Luke, come over here." I thought that was normal. It wasn't like I got older, and especially with that book that I realized that my dad was extraordinary, but he acted like an ordinary person. He treated everybody the same. Everybody was a somebody. And with children, he never said, "I was a famous guy," or "I rubbed shoulders with so and so." He was just a father. So I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about my dad was and I tried to embrace that humbleness and grace as well. But he was so graceful and so humble, and he only cared about doing this work and all the long hours he spent on the road for his children, so they'd have a better start to life than he did. So I'd be happy about this book. He would be, if that's the answer to your question you're looking for.
I want to throw to Evan because Evan has done, Evan, one of your very first books of the books you did was on your own father, who you loved as we all loved our dads, but
No,
your
that's
dad
not
was so,
necessarily true, Mike.
okay. Anyway,
Go
That's
Evan,
Russ.
not
Evan, talk about your
necessarily the
book on your
case.
dad, who met a lot of famous people driving the New York taxi.
My father was a New York City taxi driver for 27 years. He was held up 5 times. A junkie put a gun in his ear and his hand was shaking, etc. So on. And like David, it took a long while for me to realize he was a hero. My father fought in World War II. He was shot on the battlefield. He did the clerical work to free a concentration camp in Germany. And he used to say to me, they were like human skeletons. And to this day, I have a drawing on one of my walls that a prisoner did of my father. He was so grateful for them being saved. And it took me until I was writing my own books as an adult to say, wow, Dad was a hero. He had PTSD. He would scream in his sleep, not every night, but often enough. And people go through a lot of things, and to you, it's your dad. You go to the baseball game together, the wrestling matches together. So I understand what David said. And David, I am currently an adult English second language teacher to the immigrant communities. And
Awesome.
one of the things we talk about, speaking of the meaning of life, is it's really not about money. It's about family, friends, helping others, following your muse, and attaining some degree of spirituality, whether it's formal religion or just peace of mind. I'm happiest when I'm practicing Tai Chi and Qigong and petting my cats. It's not about money. No, really. So please, David, we're honored to have you on. Tell us what you feel is the meaning of life since you pursued it.
The meaning of life is to love and to learn. And I think it's just that simple. It's like we were born from love, and from love we shall return to. And it's about learning how to love as often as you can, not prejudging, because when you love somebody, when you love a stranger, and that's what Jesus Robertson Moon's about, half those people in there are strangers that I met. You give somebody attention and you uplift them, you make them feel like they're worth something, and just it's humanity at its core. I think we're here on this earth to learn how to love more, how to grow, how to evolve spiritually, how to become a better person. That's to me what the meaning of life is. And I would not have answered it that way 30 years ago. I was more into the career back then. But right now, being older, and especially taking that journey that you mentioned, um, Mike, it's just, I learned so much about people. I met so many different people, and it was the most wonderful experience I had in my life. I was going to take off for 3 months, ended up being over a year. But just connecting with people, and just it shocks me in this day and age that we still have wars that are going on where countries are attacking other countries and killing civilians. I mean, it's the 21st century. If only we spent all that energy and resources and money into uplifting humanity and helping everybody, it'd be a wonderful thing. Look at the science fiction movies. I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, but it's like when the aliens attack the Earth, it's not they're attacking Russia or attacking the United States. It's the Earth against the aliens. So we're all united against the aliens. Why can't we all be united in this day and age? Why can't we just help each other? And I think it starts by doing it one person at a time or one small group or community at a time. And that's what I'm doing right now. I have a small group of people that we're all on our mission to only find the higher versions of ourselves. And I try to do that every single day. Always be a little bit better than I was yesterday. Always, and sometimes reach those plateaus, but that's normal. But then always get better and better. And I can honestly say, Mike, since I spoke to you last, that the version of me that's speaking right now is a higher version of myself than it was 2 years ago. And my gosh, it's just, I think it's that simple, and we overcomplicate things and we read stuff into things that aren't there. The analogy would be like a text. You can't tell sometimes if it's a joke or if there's anger there or if there's just like, a little ha ha. It's just communication. Just connect with people, just talk to people. And sometimes the best communication, Russell, is listening. And Evan, it's listening to somebody. I'm going to tell you one story that's in my other book, Jesus Over to the Moon. And it's like I walk into a bar going down to see my father, who is out of the hospital. He's home and he's not in critical condition anymore. So I didn't have to be there all the time, but I'd stop in Savannah, Georgia as a halfway point for the long ride. And I walk in a bar one night and I see a server that's crying. And I said to the bartender, what's going on with her? And he said that she's having a really bad day. It's probably a really bad week. And I said, well, if I feel called, I'll go say something to her. About 5 minutes later, I felt called, and I walked over to him, just like a biker. I got the leather jacket on, the black boots, the black bandana. I said, you don't know me, but I'm a good listener. What's going on? And she told me a story, and I gave her some words of advice, and I left. And then I go back there 6 months later, and the bartender goes, David, I haven't seen you in 6 months. And I said, How do you remember my name? You're a bartender. You meet dozens of strangers a night. How do you remember my name? I don't remember yours. And he's like, because you came in here one night when the server was having a bad day, and when you left, you said, who is that guy? He can't be real. He has to be an angel that came down from heaven because he told me exactly what I needed to hear. And I'm like, I don't know what he said. He goes, it doesn't matter. It changed her life. From
Mm.
that day forward, she told her something that she needed to hear, and her life changed the next day. Now she's doing exactly what she wanted to do. And she still talks about this mythical guardian angel dressed as a biker that came down from heaven. So a little small act like that, Evan, is just that helped somebody change her life, and it helped other people change their lives. And my saying is, kindness is free. Sprinkle that shit everywhere. There's no energy being kind. It takes energy to be mean and to be ruthless and to get back at somebody. But to be kind, it's free. Just be kind. Sorry for the long-winded answer on that. I'll
Well,
stick to wrestling.
so
On the other,
I
on the
guess,
other ones.
yeah, I'd like to mention, because in my life, my experience with my father is radically different than the one that you had with your dad. And one major part of that is that my dad despised professional wrestling, couldn't stand it. And the fact that I was involved in it wanted nothing to do with it. Never saw me perform. Never went to any events that we ever did.
Well, we
And
should say you heel managed on the West Coast and continue to
yes,
do so. You ran a promotion.
Yeah. But Russell, I mean, it's if he can, he does have to like wrestling, but his son is involved in that, so I think he'd go to support his son, at least.
nope. And he had a girlfriend that absolutely hated me. So any opportunity she could capitalize on setting the two of us apart, she chose to do so. And
All
so
right. Well, our time is
my
limited.
question to
Let's.
you, David,
Okay.
is how did your father start your involvement in wrestling, and how did he introduce you to wrestling, and what was that like to be introduced
I'll
to
make it
something like
simple
that?
because Mike says that where you got to keep it going. So I was lost when I left college. I graduated math major, didn't know what I wanted to do. And so for you, I'm doing construction and all these odd jobs. And two things I loved were sports and watching television. And my dad got me a job at NBC Sports watching television, logging games for my favorite team, the New York Jets. So my first job was a joy. And that was a door because when you're doing something that you like, whether it's wrestling, whether it's promoting like you did, no matter what it is, when you find a profession where you like something and you get an entry level job in there, since you love it, it's your passion, you're gonna excel at it because you're gonna work so hard and it won't feel like work and you're gonna skyrocket that fast. So that led to me go to WBE. My father get me in the door at NBC Sports doing two things that I love watching football and watching TV just, has got me everything. So yeah, it was that easy.
Of course, we're
Wow.
talking to David Sahadi. The book is Backstage Pass: Tales from Beyond the Squared Circle. And we do need more uplifting, transformative people in wrestling. But the period here, this is obviously different than anything you've done before. And let me see if I can bring up some of these other topics because so you didn't, well, I looked them up. You
Yeah.
didn't grow up as a kid. Like I saw my grandfather used to go to see Gorgeous George and stuff at the Olympic Auditorium in LA where I'd later work. But I started watching like at 3 years of age and got to see Fred Blassie and his heel greatness in LA. It was all insane stuff. But so I'm looking, here are some of the topics in the book that'll be available in March from ECW Press, the premier publishing house for all the best pro wrestling books like the Slam series from Greg Oliver and Steve Johnson, etc. But first chapter, NBC Sports, as David just mentioned, then leaving NBC is the second chapter, joining the WWF, the first Raw opening, my first
Oh.
commercials is chapter 5. You produced a ton of commercials, three of which were aired on the Super Bowl, which is
Mhm.
about as big as it gets on a global universe. You talk about universe, wrestling universe, that's as big as it gets universally. WrestleMania celebrities, like everything you could want to read is in this book. Tell us about this book too, because I mean, you have a chapter just on Jeff Jarrett.
Mhm.
Uh,
I have many chapters on Jeff Jarrett. They're involved in cookies and balloons and everything, but it started as me writing stories that nobody's seen before or heard before because they're not moments that happen on television or moments that happen when the cameras are on. It's seeing these people when the cameras are off, working with them. So it's not just a story about, not just a book about stories I've never been told, but it's about my own evolution as a human being, as a spirit of what I'm learning through the path of working in the wrestling world for 25 years, how I evolved, watching other people who worked hard and attained the spotlight, and how they acted when they attained the spotlight. Did they change? Did they become humble, stay humble, or did they get like an ego? The ones who worked just as hard in the shadows and got maybe a piece of that spotlight, but never fully got that full spotlight. How did they react? How did they feel? So it's not just a book about backstage stories nobody's heard before, but these are moments that I lived through my own perspective. And it's also a book about humanity in that way. It's watching these people, that human beings that I'm working with, watching them over the years, watching myself grow over the years is awesome. And it's funny because here's a little secret. Mostly every wrestling promo or cold open I've written doesn't, the words don't have anything to do with pro wrestling. For example, the commercial for WrestleMania 19 is, we're all mortals. Our bodies, though strong, cannot defy time. One day we'll die. What matters most is the legacy we leave behind. To become all that we were capable of being, blah, blah, blah. That's about us as human beings, about life. But I put wrestling pictures to this that match the words, and also becomes the strongest wrestling commercial ever done. Very powerful. And that's because of the human connection, as you mentioned, with my father and also with me. It's like I'm reaching out to viewers, and visually they're feeling this about themselves, all those questions I posed in that commercial. Only those who chase dreams are the ones who catch them, and then something in that kind of a way, encouraging people to do that. And you see Kurt Angle running up the staircase with Techno Crane, and ends with Kurt Angle holding up the Olympic belt. So my work speaks to all of us. I think that's why people get touched on that in their heartstrings. It's really about themselves, about their own human being, about humanity as a whole. But if you go back and look at a lot of my cold opens, it's the wrestling pictures, but most of the words have nothing to do with wrestling. And I think that's the beauty of it. That's a little secret that nobody knows until now.
I mean, the best part of Saturday Night Live are the cold opens. I
Yeah,
live for that. It's often
I
the
do
funniest thing.
too. Yes,
And usually
yes.
the celebrity guest isn't even involved in those colds. Also in here, you could have subtitled this "Witness to History" because you were there for Hulk Hogan debuting in TNA and the Hogan Bischoff
Yeah.
era, and you talk about that there. I'm going to throw this out, and maybe Evan can expound on this because we view you as a young genius on so many creative levels. But if you were starting your own company, you're like Court Bauer, who I love, I've known him forever, but he takes all these elements, international elements, Japan, Mexico, Europe, and brings all with the best American wrestlers he can get,
Mhm.
and puts on. It's amazing. But if you were going to put on your own promotion, what creative people, living or dead, would you want to bring in? And I'll throw out names like Heyman and Pat Patterson, but who
Yeah.
would you bring in? You could have expenses,
I'd bring
nothing.
in I'd bring in Heyman and Pat Patterson. I'd bring in Eric Bischoff because working with Eric Bischoff hand in hand, I speak to him nearly every day. It's not the Eric that we're used to from seeing on TV. And we joke, 'cause he did something in one of our REF shows where he had to like play a little bit of a character when he's doing a surprise, this person's coming on out. So we joke and we call him Nitro Eric when we want that character to come on out. But the Eric Bischoff they saw in Nitro is not the same Eric Bischoff in real life. I mean, he's very respectful. We have conference calls with Eric, myself, my head of production, James, and John Norton, who is a phenomenal producer. He's done football, NFL football games. He's done the Olympics. He's done NBA basketball games. He's done UFC. He's done boxing. And Eric is just so respectful. He listens to ideas, and when he likes an idea, he thanks us for those. And if we pitch him an idea that he doesn't like, he still listens. And when we're done, he'll say, "You know what, Evan? That's a great idea. And I know where you're coming from, but it's not going to work because of A, B, and C." And then you're like, "Oh, Eric, yes, you're right." So he's so respectful, even when you tell him something that he doesn't like. And he's one of those rare individuals. And that's why I mentioned Eric, Mike, not because I'm working for him right now, or working with him right now. It's because he's one of the few people that has a creative mind, but also has a business acumen. I have a creative mind, but I suck at business. I have a hard time doing an expense report. I don't do numbers well, I'm a math major. So you're either an astute businessman or you're an artist, like a rock and roll singer or a musician or an artist or a storyteller or somebody who creates videos that are stories like myself. But it's rare that you find both in one individual, and Eric has both. Who else did I want in there? A lot of wrestlers I like that are currently working right now. I'd like Scott Demore in there. Scott's a great
Oh
guy. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
Scott Demore. I love Court Bauer. I don't know if I want Court Bauer in there. And I worked for Court, and then I quit on him to join TNA. And I came back, and then he fired me when I joined RAF. But I'll be working with Court again. But one of his problems is, and not to throw shade at Court because I think he's great and has a great mind and has tremendous passion, but he doesn't have continuity because production people come and go all the time. And one thing at RAF is that we have continuity. We brought in six heads of different departments, one of lighting, one for the screens, one for the staging, one for audio. And these guys are all stars, but they never worked together before. So it's like having an all-star team in baseball is not the greatest team out there. It's just the greatest collection of all-stars. But if you play together for a long time, you become a team. And so here at RAF, we have kept every crew member for all 5 shows. So now, even though we're all stars, they never worked with each other before, now they've worked with each other on 5 shows. So the shows are getting better and better each month that we have a show. So continuity in production is a very important thing. I think that's one thing that Court lacks for one reason or another, was whether him firing people or people leaving. That's one thing that I think is holding MLW back. And I pray for MLW. I love MLW and I love Court Bauer. And I know we work with Court again. So I didn't mean to throw shade on him, but that's just a problem, whoever's fault it is. I'm not going to say, but just there's a lack of continuity in production. So it seems like,
Two quick.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Two quick things. Paul Walter Hauser, brilliant actor, but he has gotten involved so much with a guy I call Mr. Yves Saint Laurent. You know, Mr. Saint Laurent in the back with
Who I
Court.
heard is gone right now, by the way.
Oh, he really?
I heard
I
that,
can't
yeah.
keep
I
up
heard
with
that
all of the
last
comings
night. I
goings.
heard that last night, and that shocked me. I heard it from a good source.
Is that
So
Paul
I don't
or
know if it's true.
Saint Laurent?
I can't tell you much. Saint Laurent.
Okay, but because Paul Walter Hauser, though, in a very
I,
short span of time,
yeah.
besides being a performer, he's been tried to be a real student of the game. He's helping, or at least he claimed to be helping with a book.
Yeah, I worked with him in MLW up until this past July. And that's when Eric Court found out that I was working for RAF as well. And, we decided to part ways. It was mutual. I like to think that he fired me to save face. That's how it went out publicly. But I know that he had to let me go because he couldn't match RAF. And to be honest with you, I was still willing to do Court shows, but I wasn't willing to give enough energy and time in between the shows creatively because all my energy right now is to RAF wrestling. And it's such a passion. Once I got to learn this sport, it's such a passion. It's such a different environment than professional wrestling, because in professional wrestling you have guys that are drinking at bars the night before, you have all these backstage politics, you have guys that hate each other, backstabbing each other. And this sport, most of the athletes are Christian based, and so are the founders, and I'm not, but it's just like there's such an authenticity to them, such a genuine, there's such a pureness. There's a purity to REF. There's not one single person that is trying to take somebody else down. It's amazing. I mean, my life mission, I said, is helping uplift others and inspire and helping create. And that's what everybody on this team is doing. It's just amazing, from the athletes to the corporate to production. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody's helping each other out. I saw this one moment at the last show where David Carr, he's a phenomenal wrestler. He's probably going to win the Olympic gold medal in 2028. A top-notch NCAA champion many times. His father is teaching Pat Downey, a former NCAA champion, moves the day before a match. I mean, there's so much co-creation and collaboration. It's wonderful. It's the antithesis of WWE and TNA, and I'm just shocked by that. I keep on saying, pinch me, I want to find one wart. But even looking for warts, I can't find one. It's beautiful. It's pure. It's genuine. Those are odd words to say, but this company, this sport really is. And so are the fans. It's phenomenal.
I'm going to throw to Evan, but so Google folks out there, RAF Wrestling, to go see that. And you still retain your Bar Wisdom production company for television products, content?
Yes, I do. And I also use it for creating packages for RAF Wrestling, but it's like, it's not really generating any income for me. And I don't have time to do those funny shows that we were doing about pro wrestling, 24 Station Street, and the fake the podcasts where Matt Tate would always like berate me and interrupt our show and just like, just tear me to pieces. That was a lot of fun doing that stuff, but I'm still engaged in OAF right now in creating this brand because we are right now, Eric Bischoff says he didn't think we'd get to the point where we are right now for at least a year and a half or 2 years. And we're there now. Fox Nation just extended our contract for another year starting in May, and they want to do 2 years. So the second year is an option based on us because we're getting a weekly show that's coming out as well in the second quarter, which is going to feed into the monthly shows, almost like the wrestling formula does. And ESPN. There are many other networks I can't say that are vying to get the rights to that show. So this thing is blowing up in popularity like overnight. It's amazing how fast it's become. We had 6,000 fans at our last show, and I think that's more than a TNA and AEW show combined, in 1 week. And they've been around for years. We've been sitting around for 5 shows. But it's
Well,
amazing because every audience, except for Penn State, 'cause there's a snowstorm and like nobody goes to State College, every show the audience is growing bigger. The buy rates on Fox Nation are becoming stronger. We quadrupled 2 weeks ago at our last event, the biggest buy rate ever on Fox Nation in several years, quadrupled that number. I mean, that's historic. That's unprecedented. There is a feel out there for this. I'm told that most, children, most kids right now in high school and college, they're going into wrestling instead of any other sports. And as you know, when it comes to MMA, when it comes to WWE, TNA Pro Wrestling, wrestling itself is at the core of everything. You look at the two biggest wrestlers in WWE history, you can arguably say Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar. Kurt Angle won a gold medal. Brock Lesnar was the NCAA wrestling champion. I mean, that's the foundation of any combat sport. It's just pure wrestling at its authentic self. It is. And anybody who has a pure wrestling background, if they go into WWE, it makes it a lot easier for them to become a star. The training and curve is a lot easier than somebody like A Rock, who I think trained for over a year with Dr. Tom Pritchard in the warehouse before he went on TV. So it's wonderful to see such a thing happening so quickly and organically and still maintain its purity.
Have you done any California shows?
No, but we have a show in Arizona coming up, Phoenix, which is close
That's
to
not
California.
California.
I
I'd
know,
love
I know.
to see you come out to.
No,
I had to
yeah.
go up to Sacramento. Russ remembers this for Athletes International AIM Ministries when Shawn Michaels and Sting, and they were both working for different companies where they were the Road Warriors, a plethora of guys. And there was talk of trying to get, however many years ago, 25, 30, a religious-based conscious, sensible wrestling promotion going, or at least to promote more spirituality and stuff. But it helped a lot of folks, before DDP came along, Saint DDP, to clean up guys like Scott Hall and Jake and do some heroic stuff there. Let me throw it to Evan and David. I was only pressing for time because I don't know how. I know your time is precious. How much longer can you go? I just want to make sure we don't
I can
exceed.
go another hour if you want, because is this show alive or is it edited?
No, it's just taped. So if there's
Okay,
anything
so
you
if
don't
you want
like,
to
we
cut
can.
out, no, if you want to cut out, if I'm speaking too much about RAF, it's just my passion right now.
No,
Feel free to do that.
you're.
Okay,
This is your
okay.
forum. You
Oh
get
my
to say
gosh,
whatever
yeah.
you want. That's
I
one of the
mean,
great parts about this show is that
and okay,
we're here
Russell,
for you.
then let me say one more thing about RAF. I mean, I am honored. I'm blessed. Take those words don't even describe it, but the fact that this started with Hulk Hogan and Chad Bronstein. Chad Bronstein was behind Hulk Hogan's Real American Beer that they launched a couple of years ago, and Chad takes Hulk Hogan to a amateur wrestling event. And Hulk's like, wow, I never knew how physical this is. I never knew how much strength these guys have. I never knew how hard they train. This is amazing. We have to get it on TV. And Chad's like, well, they've tried before and it's never happened. He goes, well, I want to get this a professional wrestling league. I really do. It deserves to be on TV. This needs to become popular and mainstream. And so he called Eric Bischoff, and Chad called Izzy Martinez, who is a top trainer in the country. He trains a lot of U.S. Olympians at his school. And the next phone call from Eric was to me. So I'm like the fifth element. And to be in there when it's just an idea and see the idea come to life, I cried when I got home because my dad always wanted to get in real sports. And, you're doing something for the first time, and I'm doing something for the first time as well, amateur wrestling, and being the showrunner, the head of all of production, not just cut these packages, the head of all production. Know that I succeeded. And it's hard to see if there's a picture of, you're not going to see it there.
No,
My
because of
screen
the
grab
blurring.
is a picture of, yeah, it blurred when I put it near the, yeah, it's blurring maybe right there. You can see
There you
right,
go.
a tiny dot right down
Yeah,
there
yeah,
is,
yeah.
I'm wearing my jersey and it says Pop Baloo on the back, 93. That's how old he was when he passed. And my dot in that picture, the picture was huge, and that dot was like an ant. I'm like, what is that? And I blew it up, and that was me wearing Pop Baloo jersey after our first show. And I have my arms to the sky. I'm actually waving to the cameraman. It looks like I'm waving my dad in heaven, like saying, thank you, Pop, making it happen. And when I saw that picture at home and I came back having that satisfaction, like, wow, we didn't just pull it off, but we pulled it off friggin' well. And I saw that photo, I cried. I freaking cried because it became real. My dad's wish and also this league. And it's just gotten better and better each show. And I'm just so enthused by that. I mean, again, having the honor of Eric Bischoff calling me, of all the people out there he could have called, that's an honor. That's a blessing. I'm forever grateful.
Well, and Kurt Angle, I don't know if he's still tapped to do commentary. Have
He
you used
does.
guys
Yeah,
like
he loves Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle loves REF and he loves being there. And we don't want to overexpose Kurt, so he does the two co-main events, which makes him feel special. And now you're only hearing his voice for like 30 or 40 minutes as opposed to 3 hours plus. And I think that makes Kurt more important as well, hearing that. It's kind of like Eric Bischoff had an argument with our ring announcer because we wanted to shorten the announcements for the ring and tighten up the action. Our first show was 3 hours and 40 minutes. We now got it down to 2 hours and 45, which is prime. And the announcer was saying, I treat every event like it's a main event. And then Eric Bischoff told him, I get that, but you have to get my way. I don't want to do that. I want to treat the main events like main events because if you treat all 10 matches like a main event, then you have no main events. And there's this agreement there, but I agreed with Eric because now our co-main events, and sometimes it's three co-main events, feel special. They feel bigger. They have more packages. And that's when Kurt Angle comes out. So it just raises the bar on those matches because, they are main events and you have Kurt Angle doing the analysis for those matches. But I think it worked out perfectly. And again, that's something that we're learning as we go along. How can we make the show better? What can we do to keep the pace going? How do we make people feel more special?
I hope you'll bring in somebody like a guy I know, Ruan Gardner, who was the last heavyweight gold medalist for the U.S. And he's knows all of those guys, trained with Dan Gable, all the total amateur legends. But somebody like him, I think he would shine there. Let's throw to Evan, who I've been negligent in bringing aboard sooner. Ev.
It's okay. You mentioned humanitarian efforts, and one of the themes on this show that we regularly discuss is so many of our legends and pioneers in wrestling do not end well. They need GoFundMes for hospital bills, to save their homes, to even be buried. Is there an obligation from WWE or other organizations to help these guys at the end? The NFL has a fund to help their pioneers, and these guys made no money back in the day. A lot of these guys never broke $100,000 before Hulkamania era, rock and wrestling era. These guys made no money. They were on the road 300 plus days a year, supporting their families back home. And sometimes, many times, they do not end well. Nope. So I think you're the perfect guy to talk about this. What do you think?
I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'm going to say in Real American Freestyle, the athletes that are there are the most elite athletes in the world. I mean, I'm being a little embellishment when I say this, but for a match, they train 6 hours a day, 6 days a week for 6 weeks. It's not 6 weeks, it's around that, but everything is like 6, all for a 6-minute match. So the athletes, and I'm going to get to the WWE and pro wrestling, the athletes in RAF are the most elite athletes in the world. You won't find an ounce of body fat on them, and they can't wrestle if they're at 97% because they will lose. These guys can take on anybody. A wrestler will destroy a boxer, destroy a man 3 times their size because they know leverage and know how to do things. We have heavyweights that are 250 pounds that on a takedown, if you get body slammed on your back, it's 4 points. But if you get body slammed on your front port, it's only 2 points that are taken away from you. And we had a match where a wrestler, Mason Parris, getting body slammed by Wyatt Hendrickson, and halfway through the split second of him being body slammed, he's able to turn his upper body so that his chest hits the mat while his lower body is still facing the other way, like almost to a complete 360. And that's a man. There's no other sport where a guy that weighs 250 pounds can do that. That being said, they're the most elite athletes, but the professional wrestlers in WWE, TNA, AEW, they take the most physical abuse. They take so much punishment because every big move, like a pile driver, there's the risk of the guy who's taking the pile driver, but it's the opponent's knees who's delivering the pile driver that is taking the impact. When guys jump out of the ring, it's the guys that are catching them and falling that take the impact. Their bodies are damaged more than NFL bodies are. I don't know of any wrestler who is over 50 years old who hasn't had to have back surgery or knee surgery or some kind of surgery. They have more surgery than any other sport out there. So although the RAF wrestlers may be the most elite wrestlers, these professional wrestlers are the ones who take the most beating. they take the most physical abuse of their
Well,
bodies, and
your
it's sad
guys aren't
because
getting
there's
hit by tables or
no,
chairs
no, and no, but
and
there are serious injuries in there that happen.
oh,
People
I'm
break
sure. Oh,
arms
yeah,
and break bones. Yeah,
absolutely.
but not. Yeah, I mean, you're not getting punched in the face like you're on UFC or hit with a table or a chair as you're on pro wrestling. You're not diving off of a ladder, and if you don't land the right way, you're screwed. And these guys are. So getting back to what you said, Evan, these guys are risking themselves and their bodies for a company. For themselves as well, but also for a company. And to me, it's only fair if that company had something for them. I don't believe they do. They have a wellness program for substance abuse, the WD does, but I don't know of any professional wrestling organization out there. And please tell me I'm wrong. I want to be wrong on this one, but I think there's one that takes care of wrestlers when they're 60 years old and they can no longer
They're all
wrestle.
considered independent
That's
contractors.
so sad. But I mean, they're sacrificing their bodies for the genre. We can call it a sport if we want to, but for the genre, for the business. They're sacrificing their bodies. They're taking great
for their
risks and just,
art.
I know, and stuff for their art. And to not get compensated for that when they're crippled, when they're having all these surgeries, that's shameful. I'm sorry. You got me on a soapbox right now. I didn't fully know that, but that's shameful. That's one of my disappointments right now in that world of sports entertainment. It's
Well, we see a
shameful.
lot of
What these guys go
fans that
through.
say that that wrestlers don't deserve that. They're
They
just
do.
lucky to be.
No, I'm sorry. I'm on.
No, but you shouldn't
This
have
is emotion
fans have
speaking now. Yeah.
to pay the GoFundMe that some of the
No, they
companies,
should not
particularly,
have to. You have
yeah,
billionaires that are making money off of this, and corporations are making money off of this, and like these guys having to go do GoFundMe's. Please, that's disgusting. I'm sorry
Yeah, no,
about that
but
emotional thing. I'm not thinking what I'm saying, but that just
Evan
well,
insults
has
me.
tried to
here's a
bring
bigger
up.
picture. Russ, hold on a second. The bigger picture with TKO, purchasing UFC first and then WWE, and now their focus is strictly on, residuals and income and revenue, versus Vince, love him or hate him, but he did at times, kept it a family business when he tried to make things affordable to a family of four, knowing what they're going to park at Madison Square Garden, pay for parking and gimmicks, concessions, and then not the tickets. And now TKO has elevated ticket prices to where there's pushback from fans,
On
and
purpose.
Yeah.
yeah. And UFC, where I've shot Octagon side and asked people in the front row, what are you paying tonight for front row? And this was before TKO, 4,200, 4,400 for a front row seat, and not even, a mega pay-per-view, not a Hoist Gracie, Kenny Shamrock, Dan Severn, my day type of thing, or GSP from Montreal type.
Mm.
Uh, so the onus, if they're just only bottom line residuals with TKO, what is your thought? When you heard WWE was being acquired by TKO, uh, and now it just seems so corporate as opposed to we're getting less
Yeah.
art form, more guys injuring themselves, just trying to pop each other or themselves with high spots than my day when Fred Blassie didn't have to take bumps and entertained a crowd
I
of
love Fred Blassie. Yeah.
15,000.
Yeah. My take, I have no take on that. It's apathetic. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, my thing went silent for a second, but I have more emotional investment in TNA and in other companies I work for than WWE right now, and I'll tell you why. I find their programming hard to watch. I'm going to call up something that I wrote yesterday. Do I still watch WWE was the question I was asking. I said, honestly, I don't enjoy watching it anymore because I was there when WWF was on life support. And I was there when we lit the fuse on the Attitude Era and went head to head with WCW Nitro in the Monday Night Wars. That period didn't just raise the bar, we blew it up. We took risks, we broke rules, we reinvented how wrestling was shot, written, and consumed, how performers performed. Those were years when we broke barriers, pushed the envelope, and completely redefined how professional wrestling was presented on television. It was electric. There was a real sense that we were doing something special and something that never existed before. And today the business just feels safe, sanitized, and repetitive. Week after week, it's the same formula, the same beats, the same television, just repackaged. The industry hasn't been evolving. It's been recycling. And once you're part of a real creative revolution like I was back in the 90s and early 2000s, it's impossible to get excited by something that's afraid to challenge itself. That is something that I wrote down yesterday. So WWE, man, it looks so great. But Raw, do you know how they come up with that name Raw? Mike, you're going to like this. And first of all, you must be a doctor in psychology because I was getting hot when you talking about the wrestlers not getting compensated for injuries, and you come right in with the question to cool me down. But there was heat with me when I was talking about that, so thank you. But Raw got its first name because it was a pseudonym. And for fans that don't know, pseudonym is a nice way of saying something like a prostitute is a lady of the night. Sounds better. Was a pseudonym for low budget and cheap because they were losing money back in 1992. So they had to present a show live on Monday nights that replaced their other show that was Raw because there were no big stages, no big pyro, no effects. And now it's so shiny and so polished and so everything that looks great, that looks big time. But I miss the era when we were revolutionizing the industry, when things felt real, when wrestlers got hurt even more even than they do today because they were taking these risks. Mick Foley was jumping off the top of a steel cage in Hell in a Cell. I mean, that we were doing things that were revolutionary back then. And wrestlers were getting really injured back then. And I saw wrestlers back then, and some of my book where they would get a serious injury, but they'd still finish the match. And they'd walk backstage like they were fine, and then collapse once they got through the curtain. That's much passion and care they had for it. And that's why I got so upset when you told me that there's no fun for them or anything except for GoFundMe, when their careers are over, after all the sacrifice that they gave to make their art form, as you said, Evan, something that was compelling for people to watch, something that was new, something that was daring. I mean, they physically do risk their lives in some of the moves that they do, especially Jeff Hardy back in the day. And to not can't be compensated for that, it's shameful. But yeah, anyway, let me get off that subject because I just get angry talking about that. There should be something out there for that. And I'd love to start something for that, some kind of a way, whether it's something we do with an online protest or something, whatever, I don't know, and like make it build a petition, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how you do that, but I'd love to be part about that because as human beings, it should be taken care of.
Perhaps not boycotting, but just putting pressure on TKO. Let me say this very quickly. March 20th, 1991, I'm shooting All Japan Women at Korakuen Hall. Debbie Malenko's replacing Medusa as the Gaijin foreigner coming in, and she was teamed for her debut match for All Japan Women in a match with Seki Hasegawa, who broke her neck in the first 3 minutes and wrestled for another 20 minutes holding it, often just one arming and beeling people, etc., but with her right hand holding the back of her neck. You can go back and look at it. And then
Oh
she was
my
in the
gosh.
hospital for 9 days and out of the business for like 2 years before she recouped. But
Mike, I'm
she
not going to go
wrestled
back and
with a
look at that.
broken neck like a Kurt Angle, but much longer than Kurt did
Yeah,
at the Olympics.
yeah,
And in Kurt too, and
yeah.
you hear those kind of things that are insane. So, Evan, any follow up on that? Like, what can we do? You know, whatever. It's a fact of life that fans will go out of their way for these GoFundmes, etc. The money that folks get, I was on the executive board
Yeah.
of Cauliflower Alley for 12 years, and we really only give a pittance. Some of these guys like Kamala, James Harris, he needed X
Yeah.
amount for his hospital bills and to
Yeah.
save his home, even though he was dying. He had his legs amputated from diabetes. So, Ev, are any
Hey, Can,
thoughts
can,
on,
can I jump in there real
helping these
quickly?
guys?
Can I jump in there real quickly before Evan speaks? You talk about like the fans that are giving money to these GoFundMes, and most of the fans, I mean this in a respectful way, not negative way, but they're like blue collar families. So if they're giving $200 for a GoFundMe account, that's like a present that one of their kids is going to get, a special present or some kind of like treat or whatever that they're personally sacrificing to help this person. Because they're blue collar people that pretty much work paycheck to paycheck. And it's like, you have these rich people that are doing nothing. So, Evan, please go off on that. And I don't mind going on, continuing on this subject because to me it's important right now. I did not know
Sure.
that nothing existed. This
Um,
is breaking news to me.
I've written books for WOHW Publishing. Kenny Casanova runs it, and he did a book with Kamala, and he gave all the proceeds of the book to Kamala, which saved his house. Saved his house. He was about to lose it. So the only thing I could think of beyond GoFundMe's, which are hit and miss, is if we get behind a wrestler's merch and heavily promote it somehow, whatever it may be, you could raise a lot of money in a short amount of time to help a wrestler with their hospital bills, with saving their homes, whatever the case may be. But recently, when Sir Mo from Men on a Mission was dying, and he asked for $50,000, none of these billion-dollar corporations came
Mm-hmm.
through, and the poor guy died. And that's a shame. That's really a
And
shame.
Evan, you've publicized some fun GoFundMe's yourself, and fans themselves have given you a hard time.
Oh
And
yeah,
said,
yeah.
you know,
They they have this misconception, quote, they all pissed away
Yep.
fortunes on wine, women, and song, and the vast majority never made fortunes to begin with.
Yeah. I think I
So,
have an idea.
yeah.
Thing me feeling that. Is there any way we can start some kind of a movement where it's like we're putting pressure on these companies themselves to like take care of their athletes when they're hurt, when they're injured, when they're retired, like the NFL does? Is there any way we can attack it that way as opposed to pushing somebody's merchandise? Why don't we guilt the companies? Why don't we guilt WWE or TNA or something like that?
Russell's a legitimate lawyer. He'd know more on
Yeah.
his end than I would.
Yeah.
Williams Hall of Fame, and they could maybe hold benefits. We've done similar stuff at
Yeah.
Cauliflower Alley. It just we're not raising enough that some of these guys need, particularly when they've got a ton of medical
Yeah.
bills, the real serious stuff. And that's why I egg on like a TKO is okay, it's fine to, now when you talk about blue collar, you're right. All the years, the first time I shot ringside, I was blessed to shoot ringside at Madison Square Garden. 73 was the first time
Wow.
for a Bruno match. It was all blue collar. Now with TKO, you don't see those type of Evan remembers when he went to Nassau Coliseum or the Meadowlands or
Garden.
MSG itself. It's no longer that way. You can a night out for four, a family of four at MSG could cost upwards of $2,200 with the parking.
I didn't know that.
It's unbelievable the prices now, which is kind of what I like about when I do put over MLW or I love TNA. I love Billy Corgan's NWA. It's still affordable. It's still the Vince
Yeah.
McMahon when he was still a human being in the 70s, or like what he took from his father. Let's keep it, for the family and or affordable to the family because they're our bread and butter, and it would be reciprocal. The fans would nonstop always buy their tickets for the next event a month in advance.
Hmm.
Ev, do you have some ideas? Could you see like the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in upstate New York do benefits for one or more wrestlers in addition to their regular schedule events?
I would say David's on the money. You get somebody like
Yeah.
TKO, $1 billion corporation. You get half of 1%
Yes,
of the
that's where we should get
money
it from.
WWE
Yeah.
brings in, set
Yeah.
up a fund, and help these guys when they
Yeah.
need it.
And as Russ said, we can talk about this offline, but that's where we have to go. We have to go after the
Yeah,
companies because it's ethically and morally up to them, if you ask me. It's not up to us to raise the money. It's up to us to get a movement going that's going to publicly shame them so that they will establish this. And maybe just leave
Some
it
of
at that,
the
Russell, for now, but
some of
that's
these
what I think we need
MMA
to do.
guys don't end up well either.
I
well,
know.
look at
I know.
the Rock made the movie about a guy I know, Mark Kerr, and when he made $0 from UFC and Pride, which is the far superior to Japan's Pride's far superior to UFC, the greatest MMA promotion ever. Mark Kerr and Mark Coleman, they had to train at Rick Bassman's dojo next door to me in Irvine, UPW, where they'd have sambo expert Tom
Hmm.
Howard would train UFC athletes to go work for Inoki's New Japan,
Yeah.
Mark Kerr and Mark Coleman, and that was what Smashing Machine was all about, Rocks.
Tell Rick
And
Bassman I
it's
said hello, by the way. Please, I tell him I
Bassman,
said hello.
to see Boss Root and guys upper echelon, not just Mark Kerr and Coleman, but Boss Root and Josh Barnett being trained to be pro wrestlers to make their debuts in New Japan and other companies, and then to see Josh go on to have his own blood sport promotion, which is outstanding, exciting. But yeah, we need more Rick Bassmans so we don't have these, the sad stories of like a Mark Kerr. But Ev, I got off topic. Oh, again, we're talking to David Sahadi, of course, my personal genius in the wrestling creative business. The latest book, authored by David Sahadi, not just the writer, but authored.
Possibly
Backstage
happy.
Pass, Tales from Beyond the Squared Circle. The first book I've ever seen to have kayfabe on the cover. Hopefully that's going to stay as the cover. It's taping your mouth shut, black
Yeah.
tape, kayfabe on it. Ev,
And
what
I did
did
the
I interrupt
opposite.
you? Yeah, I love that cover.
Well, hold
What
on.
were you going to say,
Let's go to
Evan?
wrestling for a second before I go back to Evan, because I know Russ wants to talk about wrestling and the book. And you mentioned Rick Bassman. So one of my favorite spots is the Kane No Mercy spot where he's at bat and we use the voice of John Sterling. Uh,
Mm.
this pot aired in the baseball playoffs. I purposely tell it to baseball audience, so you think for the first 10 seconds baseball commercial. John Sterling, the voice of the Yankees, says, it all comes down to this. Bottom of the ninth, the big red machine. And the camera pans over, and it's Kane. And he takes a mighty swing at the pitch, thinks it's a home run, to dribble to the pitcher's mound. And then this could be it. And then all the rest are on the field. They take out the pitcher who's got the ball. They take out the first baseman, the shortstop, second baseman. Rick Bassman supplied me all the extras to be baseball players. And Frankie Kazarian was the catcher, the first baseman, and also the third baseman, because you shoot these things one scene at a time. And Farouk, Ron Willis, did not one, but nine garbage can shots to his back. I knew he had it after the first take. It's like, let me do it one more time. Let me do it one more time. And Frankie Kazarian, he was in another time. He's like, sure. We did it 9 times. So I realized that Ron was just working this guy, Frankie Kazarian. But Frankie Kazarian was there because of Rick Bassman. So I just want to tie in that whole Rick Bassman mention that you did with the book and with the story from the book. So now go ahead, Evan. I'm sorry for that.
This question popped in my head. What is the good, the bad, and ugly of working for a billion-dollar corporation like WWE? Brian Solomon's a buddy of mine, and he always talks about this. Whatever you're comfortable sharing.
The good is that you get paid a lot of money, and if money's important to you, it's not that important to me right now. It's important to me right now so I can help other people, because I've dedicated my life right now to a life of service. Yes, I want to live comfortably. I want to drink the finest vodka there is, like Grey Goose or Belvedere, but I drive a Jeep. I don't need 3 cars. I'm going to live the same way I have my whole life. So I want to make more money so I can help share it with other people, help people in need, do things like that. Money to me is no longer about material things. It's now a currency to help other people as well. And that's what I'm doing with my money. I bought somebody a guitar who's a great musician, just need a guitar. A good guitar, and he got one. His career's taken off. I helped this lady friend of mine with the Me Too movement, and you know what? I don't blame her. It's society today, but I helped her get a car, and I helped her, get a place to live. I helped a homeless man just by giving him hope and a few dollars, and now he's no longer homeless. So money is a good thing. That's a good thing about it. The bad thing is you're not treated like a human being. You're treated like a bot or like a robot or something. You're in a big corporation. You're easily disposable and replaceable. That's the bad thing. And that's also the ugly thing. The ugly thing is that it's all about the bottom line. What's their profit margin? And do we have to hack off a few heads or slash a few jobs so that we keep our bottom line going well? That's the ugly. If you equate to pro wrestling, the ugly is that these wrestlers don't have a place to go when they're older and they need surgeries and they're injured and they're bankrupt. So that's the ugly side of it. I hope I answered your question well.
You certainly did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm looking at the some of the last things that I'd love to see. Ric Flair's final match. Were you at that one, the tag match with Jeff and Andrade?
I directed that match, and here's a
Wow.
funny thing, and I think I'm going to be on Conrad's show next week because he has Jeff Jarrett on there, but I went to Scott D'Amore. I heard Ric Flair's matches in Nashville, and he might be part of it because Conrad had called Scott because the fairground sold out and he needed a bigger venue, and Conrad Thompson wasn't equipped to do that, so he asked Scott for help. I said, man, if you need help on that, I'll direct Ric Flair's last match for free. And Scott said, be careful what you wish for. And so I directed Ric Flair's last match for free. But I had the privilege of saying I'm the director who directed Ric Flair's last match. So to me, that is the currency back. The little bragging right there, which I haven't used yet that often, except for on the show right now. But I directed his last match, and it was, it was a goal. It was a good attempt. Ric wasn't in the best condition. Age-wise, physically, nor hydration-wise, because he admitted himself that he was out the night before with Kid Rock having a few too many beers that he should have had. But one brilliant thing Jeff Jarrett did, love him or hate him, is that he knew that Ric Flair couldn't put on a long match after the condition he was in. Ric Flair blacked out legitimately 3 times during that match. He passed out. And Jeff Jarrett knew that was going to happen. So when Jeff Jarrett had his entrance, a match time, guys, I'm sure you know this, but the fans might not know. If you have a 25-minute match, that includes the entrances. That's from like the first entrance until like 30 seconds after the bell and your post-match stuff. So if the entrances are longer, that's less match time you have to work. So Jeff Jarrett, knowing that, milked his entrance for 3 minutes. And I didn't know this until after the fact. That's why he did that when I found out Ric Flair not being in the best shape. But Jeff did it in such a great way that it didn't feel like he was milking it. He was going around the ring. He was harassing crowds. He was getting in arguments with kids and their fathers and parents like fighting back at Jeff. And it's compelling TV. and he's picking fights with everybody. But what he's really doing is just milking time, playing the ultimate heel, so that it's less time for Rick to have to be actually in the ring working. And so that's my memory of Ric Flair's last match. I wanted to do that, and how Rick passed out 3 times, and Jeff, tried to hide that fact, and so did Jay, and so did his partner, which I think is the good side of the wrestling community when like fellow wrestlers stick up for each other and look out for each other. And I guess that's because it wasn't under any one particular banner. It was just Ric Flair that everybody came together as one and like made personal sacrifices for the good of Ric Flair and this one benefit. As opposed to if it was in WWE alone or TNA alone, they might not have been so humanitarian in their ways of like, helping with Flair and each other taking, sacrifices just to help other people out. But they all came together and they all like were unselfish during that night. That's one thing I take from that, the unselfishness of it. It felt like pure pro wrestling. I talk about pure RAF wrestling. This felt like pure pro wrestling where everybody was trying to help everybody else out.
That card was fantastic. I love the 3 in the ring. Andrade was married to Ashley Charlotte at the time. The love they showed for Rick in that, the entire
Yes.
card was spectacular. The night before the Ric Flair roast, you could see the love a lot of guys had. I forget who it was. It wasn't Jeff Jarrett, but somebody got up there and they just couldn't roast him. So it was more speaking from the heart, but you're at a roast. You're supposed to rib the guy or poke fun at him, and that
Yeah.
person just couldn't do it. I forget who the hell that was, but it was pretty amazing. It shows you the love we've had for a guy who I
Yeah.
saw. Vern Gagne breaks in, and Big Chubby still at
Yeah.
his weightlifting weight in 73, 74,
Yeah.
going through the Billy Robinson Vern Gagne camp there in Robbinsdale. And to see him transform his body, come into Mid-Atlantic, and these as Rip Hawk's nephew character and all the stuff that he'd go on to do later. Just amazing. So again, this book is available, Russ. Okay, in March,
March 4th.
ECW is the press for it.
Yeah. Simon
tell us,
Schuster distributed in the United States. You can do
wow.
pre-sales right now though. You can purchase it online right now.
Yes,
At any
David,
place.
you've been a great guest. We would love to have you on in
Sure.
the future. You have so many things to talk about.
Oh,
We are
I'll drag him on there because
Mike, I like doing this with you. It's a pleasure. It's a conversation. It's not an interview. It's a conversation.
well,
yeah,
I
it's
don't view
great.
you as a wrestling person because you have so many facets like a diamond, to
Thank
be
you.
trite. But one of those good hearts in wrestling always, and you're a good representative because I mean we a lot of us died when Andre was on the Tonight Show, even though Johnny Carson wasn't on that night. We had finally a wrestler going mainstream and bringing some cred to it where people were closeted fans. Now, no longer movie stars, Cardi B, all of these folks love, I mean, everybody in hip hop, they all love wrestling. And it's folks like you that carry the proper torch. Where do you want to send people to? Obviously, it's going to be in all bookstores, but Amazon, or do you have, in fact, let's let you plug
Yeah.
away your sites, your social media, your causes, anything you'd like to plug,
Well,
and where you'd like.
my new cause is going to be helping wrestlers, or that's guilting the companies into helping wrestlers when they're retired and injured, need help. My Instagram handle is at Sahadi3, but I'm not a big social media person anymore. I got addicted to it at one time, and just like enough is enough. But you can purchase a book if you just Google it, David Sahadi Books or Backstage Pass. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it at Simon Schuster. A lot of places pop up where you can buy that right now. The pre-sales. And will be available in bookstores everywhere March 10th, but I would advise just getting one, in advance pre-sale, and you'll have it delivered to your house by March 10th, which is great. So just Google the book, and there's, you can get an ECW press as well. There are many places where you can purchase that book. Just Google the book, David Sahadi Backstage Pass, or David Sahadi Books, and you'll find it. It's got the yellow cover with the kayfabe on the mouth.
Now I get stressed out. My wife's not letting me watch the news, so she's teaching me meditation. I throw on Bjork, Kraftwerk, Pink Floyd to get my mind off what's going on in the world today. But who are some of your favorite artists before we let you go? Who are your favorite
Oh,
artists, music and otherwise, maybe performers or Broadway
there are
folks?
many, but right now it's Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam. And it's more Eddie Vedder than Pearl Jam because he speaks to my spirit. His lyrics speak to my soul. He writes about humanity in ways of love, love loss, betrayal, falling in love, trust, loss, all these things you can relate to. And one great thing about Eddie Vedder is he only did one music video, and he refused to do music videos the rest of his career. And his label was pushing him, and he said no, because my lyrics can mean different things to different people. Like there's a song that can mean the loss between a father and a son. How I take one of his songs called "Release," and also called the long way, the long path. But it could be about a breakup between your boyfriend and girlfriend. It could be about somebody you miss who you dated. It could be about somebody you never met that you miss. So he wants the audience to listen to his lyrics and not have these preconceived images that you see in a music video. Tell them what the video is about, because like a poet, it's many things to many people. Like an artist, anybody can look at that and interpret it differently, and that's what Eddie wants. But he's got a spirit. He vibrates high. He cares about humanity. He's shy in public. He's very vocal on stage. And they tried to get smaller because he didn't want the fame. He didn't want to be a rock star. And that's why they broke away from the label. And by trying to get smaller and be unseen, they became bigger. Like he wrote a song called Immortality. Some died just to live. And people thought that was about committing suicide. Some died just to live. But it's about him at that time, 3 years in, wanting to quit Pink Floyd, wanting to quit being the rock star, which he never took that label, and want to go back into a life of just being hidden, being unseen. Some died just to live. You want to go back into living a life and not being a rock star and being beholden to many things. So you won't see him do many interviews. They don't do any music videos whatsoever, but they tape every concert, which is great. So you can watch all their concerts live. Everyone they've ever done, they have recorded with multicams. But just his words and what he stands for and the cause he stands for, he's a reflection of me. He's like, we share the same spirit, or a piece of the same spiritual cloth.
If you saw the COVID benefit, it was like a 3-4 hour thing with every great artist on there. Eddie Vedder had the emotional core. I can't think of the name of that song, but he
Yeah,
sounds like he's a howling wolf in it during like the rejoin or the chorus or something.
yeah.
Just amazing, to where a ton of us went out and bought that. We'd never heard that song
Yeah.
before. Just him on a
His
piano banging
voice,
away.
yeah. Wow, but he's just his voice. I mean, he's done more covers than any other musician has, and he does them for free because they're like the artist. He's at a cover with Cat Stevens, Old Man Take a Look, and Neil Young, Old Man Take a Look at Me Now I'm a Lot Like You, which I relate to with my dad. He's done covers with
Mm.
Who. He's done covers with REM, Rolling Stones, all these other artists. All of a sudden he's like, hey, nobody can sing the song better than, let's bring up here Mr. Eddie Vedder. He comes out there for one song and he sings it. And he sings a song. He sings a Tom Petty song like it's his own song, where he grabs a microphone and closes his eyes and just puts his heart and passion into that song. He sings other people's works as if he wrote them. They came from his heart. And that's the beauty of Eddie Vedder. And he does it for free. He doesn't
Yeah,
get paid to do that.
that's really a great, topic that we could spend even more time talking on, but we're out of time.
Okay,
So I hate to
fair.
Go and
to
listen
pull
to
Well,
it.
we'll
ASAP
say,
Rocky, that new thing that he did. He
yeah,
performed the first song on Saturday
yeah,
Night Live about a week ago. I told
I
Evan
will.
to watch
I
that.
will.
When they have the
Yeah,
drum beat going bump, bump, bump,
yeah,
you see his
yeah,
head being slammed on the car,
I
and a pro
will.
wrestler is in there that throws him through a fence, a
Yeah,
wall
I love
at
it.
the end, if you saw that
Well, Russ is
SNL.
rushing us off, so I'll just say goodbye. It's the end of part one. Part two will be done in the future, okay?
Exactly.
Russ, how about that? End of part one. Thank you, guys. I love you all. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you
Sorry,
so
Russ, for
Absolutely.
much.
talking so long,
Go
but you guys are
support the
wonderful.
book, Backstage Pass, Tales from Beyond the Squared Circle, with the one, the only David Sahadi. Domo arigato gozaimashite, kombate kudasai.
Good
And
night,
please
Amen.
email
everyone.
me, because I got to get you those photos of your dad plus some stuff from Japan and whatnot.
I will. And this.